Welcome back to this week's episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. Today, I am bringing you a member spotlight, and we have Barbara, one of our Lady Landlords members, on to share her story with all of you. So, Barbara, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing today?
It's a pretty good day. Thanksgiving break is coming up, and I've got a week off to spend with my son. I love it.
Oh, you took the whole week off.
I did, yeah. So I had the time, so might as well enjoy him while he's little.
Great idea. I'm really happy that you're able to take that time. So let's start by just having you just share a little bit about who you are as just the person, Barbara, before we kind of get into real estate investor, Barbara. How does that sound?
Sounds perfect. So I guess you want to start a little bit about me. I am a mom of an amazing 6-year-old. I'm actually technically a single mom, but I do have an awesome boyfriend who's really stepped up to take the place of a of a parent in that role. I'm a runner. I like to knit. I also volunteer with Girl Scouts, and I just took on the fundraising role at my son's PTA. So I'm a little bit nervous, but it's kind of exciting. Am I overwhelming myself? I'm also the oldest of 4 girls and a survivor of domestic violence, which really plays a key role in a lot of the additional volunteer work that I do.
Yes. And that's actually something that we both have in common and have been able to really kind of chat about how that fits into a little bit of our mission within real estate investing too. So I'm sure we're going to get into that because I think your mission is beautiful. And I would love for you to share more about that when we kind of get here. But for now real estate, I know you have a successful profession as well. Now, in addition to taking on the fun political world of the PTA. So what do you feel attracted you to now taking on this other project of investing in real estate?
So I kind of fell into it initially. When I moved out of Pennsylvania, the property I owned up there was just no possible way to sell it. I didn't have the funds to bring to the table. I was underwater. And so had a great, I had a real estate license, but I wasn't actually doing real estate. But one of the realtors I worked with also did property management. And she said, let's get this rented and in time we'll get it sold. So rented it out. She's been doing the management up there. And we always would rent it with the intention of eventually selling. And then when I moved down here to Florida, once I got rid of my ex, I remember that. And then my boyfriend, eventually new boyfriend, we moved out to another property as well. We moved into a new home. I then had another house that I could afford to rent out. And so that was a little bit of the start of, I have these, I might as well rent them and bring in a little extra income. So, and possibly plan for retirement.
Gotcha. So the first house, fine. I definitely understand with the move that made sense, that and it sounds like when you said like underwater, so it just wasn't in a place where selling was the right option, right?
No, it was one of those where Allentown, Pennsylvania had not recovered even close in 2012 when I moved from the 2008 crash. So, I mean, I owed more than the house was worth and it just wasn't possible. So.
Right. So that was a great idea that then you said, let's put a long-term tenant in here, make sure then that we can still kind of stabilize it, get some cash flow, and we'll figure out what happens with that next, right?
Yes, exactly.
So then when you moved to Florida, you then bought your own property there.
Initially, my ex and I rented, and then we were able to buy a property, which after the divorce, I was able to basically buy him out and get the mortgage in my name. So, yeah.
Gotcha. And then now when we found fantastic boyfriend and we moved in together, then we were able to rent out that property.
Yes, exactly. So, yep.
See, and I think that's a very common story that I hear from other lady landlords is about they were living in one place, they had to move for certain reasons. It did not make sense, or maybe they really liked the property that they lived in and they wanted to keep it. So they turned it into a rental. And that was just kind of the other opportunity. They weren't necessarily going out buying a rental, but it just kind of became a rental. So I think that's so interesting that actually happened in your situation, not once, but twice.
Twice, yeah. Yeah, and I was very sentimentally attached to that house in Pennsylvania. I mean, first property, I was really young when I bought it. Oh, it's in a gorgeous, gorgeous old house. So very much.
And I know you've had long-term tenants in that property that also love that property.
I actually had the tenant that she actually just bought the property, which is really cool. But one of the reasons she bought it is that She's a first-time homeowner, and she realized, thanks to the property manager, that she was able to get a loan. And
Mhm.
she knew that I'd done a lot of maintenance, I'd done a lot of work, but at the same time, she knew that it was always an option for her to make an offer. She loves the
Yeah.
backyard, she loves the railing, all the things I love about it, she did too, and it felt right. So
Yeah. And that was fantastic that you were able to then help another woman become a homeowner.
I love it. Yeah. So,
So,
yeah.
and so you did end up selling that property. What made you then decide to go forward with selling that one?
So that was one where the tenant had always known that if she wanted to buy the house, because when she first moved in, she told the property manager that was a dream of buying her first house. She could
Mhm.
make a reasonable offer, and if it was reasonable and I could afford it, I would be open to discussing and selling. It turns out, over time, her biggest concern was she couldn't get a loan because of, not her credit's impeccable, but she didn't have the funds. So when she realized that the interest rates are still low and they're not going to stay forever, she talked to a bunch of lenders, said, hey, this is the opportunity. And she made an offer. And it's probably below what I could have gotten on the open market, but
Mhm.
she loves the house, and she's also using it to do a lot of good in the community with some of the other social issues she's active in. So
Oh,
she proposed that. There's a program she'll foster at-risk youth, adult youth, like, trying to find stable housing so they can go out. She's turning the backyard into a registered like butterfly something or other for the town. So I love it. But when she made that offer, I had just learned about a 1031 exchange from my aunt, who is a real estate landlord in California. I'm like, oh,
mhm.
what is this? Okay, this makes sense. Do I get the funds out of it to be able to do something? And when I realized I could, I took the offer and let that house move on. And she let me go up and say goodbye. She let me take my son to see the house. So I was so
Oh,
excited.
Barbara, that's fantastic. And
Yeah.
I actually feel probably pretty confident that if you had called her in another year and said, hey, I'm in the area, I would like to come by, I am
Yeah.
quite sure she would welcome you with open arms.
Oh,
So,
I'm sure she would. We're actually still in touch, dealing with a home warranty repair that has finally gotten fixed.
okay. But see, once again, I love the fact that in this situation, you said, hey, listen, this person loves this property. This is a property that also was very sentimental to you. So therefore it was great and a opportunity where you could say, you know what? Yes, I could get a little bit more money, but then I don't know who I'm going to sell it to. I don't know what
Mhm.
type of people they're going to end up being. I want to make sure that this kind of goes for kind of a bigger mission than you had. So
Mhm.
I love that you really said, you know what? I can deal with a little bit less money because of kind of the good that I'm going to put out into the universe.
Yeah.
And that's where you are now. And that actually was probably much better to deal with her for the home warranty issue than if they were new buyers that you did not
Mhm.
know that now bought this house and then are going to be totally upset that they have a problem.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And especially because it was an issue we started before the sale. It was part of the contract that had to be finished. And so she
Okay.
totally understood this is going to take longer because it's a home warranty, which will pay for a lot, but we got to fight them a bit. So she got it all. She knew exactly what was going on. So it was great.
Good. So then you took the money from the sale and then that's
Mhm.
how you already did the 1031 exchange, or are you in the process of that now?
So we had completed that. I actually completed the 1031 exchange with the closing on my newer property in Florida. This is the second one in Florida I now own. On October 12th was the closing date. So it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's just a month ago from when we're recording this episode. So, and I remember when you posted in Lady Landlords about it, that I was like, yes, she got her next property. So
Yeah.
I was so excited. So tell us a little bit about how you went about finding that
Mhm.
new property.
So first thing is that I actually have a realtor that we'd worked with, that my partner had worked with boyfriend to find the house that we live in right now, and some other things. And she's always known what eventually I wanted to do, that we want to purchase more properties, that we had by that time solidified. We think we need to do more real estate. So
Mhm.
as soon as I realized there was this possibility of a 1031, I reached out to her and I said, Stephanie, okay, what do I do? What are my next steps? What do I need? I already have a bit of a plan from some assistance with the roadmap with Lady Landlords, and so I've got a direction, but how do I find it? So she sat
Mhm.
down, she talked through what my options would be, made sure I talked to a lender that I know and that she knows that could help me qualify and help make sure I could get a nice loan. And we just kind of kept our eye on everything until the house in Pennsylvania closed. And as soon as that closed that weekend, we were out searching for duplexes that would fit in with my budget. We're out doing showings at duplexes, I should say, not just searching, but looking at them. that would fit the
Can you
budget.
share, can you share a little bit about what your experience was with doing a 1031 exchange?
So it was, I was really concerned. My aunt had told me about, I have said aunt in California. She's, she's actually close to retiring and selling property, but she had mentioned a 1031, and I had no idea what it was. So when I asked her a little bit about it, she told me, you take the money from a sale, you have to buy something more expensive than what you sold for the same purpose. So an investment for an investment. And she didn't have much other detail. So from there, what I did is I asked the realtor here, and then I asked the realtor property manager in Pennsylvania. And the one down here, thank goodness, a lot of what she does is she works with bank-owned properties. She works with other investors, and she does quite a bit of it. So while she didn't have a specific exchange company, she knew exactly who to point me to. So and she knew that I had a deadline. I had 45 days to identify 3 properties and 180 days to close. And her goal was to not even get close to that deadline, to find me the perfect property without stress on timeline. So the only real stress, my experience overall was making sure the 1031 company realized, guess what? I'm not going to drag this on. Guess what? I'm selling this house. You need to be on top of it, and I'm buying this other one. So it was a really nice experience because I knew I had a chunk of money that I could use to put as a down payment. So
yes. And how did you go about finding the 1031 company that you worked with?
Referrals. All about referrals. I asked my lender for some options. I asked my realtor for some options. I asked the realtor in Pennsylvania for some referrals. And so I talked to everybody that I was referred to, found out the cost of fees, found out what they do, their experiences. The one in Pennsylvania is who I ended up going with because he had done a lot of Pennsylvania to Florida 1031s in the last several months, strangely enough. And
random, but okay.
But I said, okay, let's go. And just a quick sign some paperwork confirming they'd be my exchange company, what they were doing with holding the funds in an escrow account, because with the 1031, I don't get those funds for the sale. So they held in escrow until the morning of closing when they wired it over to the title company.
Yes. And for any of our listeners that are considering doing a 1031, that's why it's important to have that 1031 company involved. Because when one property sells, you cannot at any time take possession of those funds. If so, you're going to be paying taxes. So that's why it's really important to make sure to have that lined up. So I'm really glad that you were able to get such great referrals from that network that you had already had, and already people that you knew, you liked, you trust, all that, to be able then to find the right person to help you through this situation, and a person that has deals from Pennsylvania to Florida. Yes. So
ironic.
There you go. So then how did you go about, now you have your 1031, you sold the property to the tenant in Pennsylvania. What did you do to start looking for then that next property in Pennsylvania and in Florida? Because now you have your deadline that you have to kind of find these property. Did you go specifically through your realtor? And how did you come up with the criteria of what you wanted to buy?
So I'd always imagined that, and this was after kind of going through the Lady Landlords group and looking at all the different things that other women have, the duplexes, the multiplexes, the single family homes. And one of my long-term goals that's not here yet, but eventually I want to have a multi-family, either a two fourplexes or an eightplex or something that's specific for survivors of domestic violence. It'll be at cost, they'll have a place to live. It looked, from everything I saw, the easiest, quickest way to start collecting funds for that would be multifamily properties. Single family home is nice, but if you don't have a tenant at all, like you have no tenant, you're not paying for anything. Whereas if you have a multifamily, if you've got one tenant, they're paying for a portion of it. And if you set it up correctly, they may be paying the mortgage. And so there's a little bit less stress. So after talking to the realtor down here in Florida, she knows my long-term goal. She knows what I'm looking to do, and basically took a look at the funds, took a look at the market, and said, okay, with what you're qualified for your loan, we need to start looking at duplexes. Maybe you'll get a triplex, but reality, you're going to get a duplex, and here is your budget. This is what, even though you can qualify for more, here's what you're really looking at fund-wise. And so from there, she did all this, knowing this, she set up this search on realtor.com. I set up Zillow, like all the different searches, or MLS, I should say, she did, but I set everything else on Zillow and there before I even closed in Pennsylvania. So we had an idea of what would actually be out there. We knew the inventory is a little bit limited, but there's inventory. We knew, and she was very careful to say, if I don't feel safe showing you this property, if I have to carry my, and she's a carry, she's got a, a license for a gun and all that, which it's like, if I have to carry this when I show you, I'm not showing it to you because I'm not safe. So
Yeah.
that was kind of, with those comments, I knew I would be looking at probably the lower end of the, the rental market. I wouldn't be looking at luxury or anything. I would be looking
Yeah.
at something that's, I guess, considered affordable, lower level. So
Mhm.
we started there. And then just as soon as we saw something that looked promising, I'd send her a message, say, hey, is there anything in the realtor notes that tells you this is good, bad, not, or whatever? She'd go through the notes. She'd say, okay, good neighborhood, bad neighborhood. It's a little bit small for the price. And if it looked like it might fit, we went to go see it. I mean, we drove all over the Tampa Bay area,
Wow.
Tampa, St. Pete, and she knew I wanted to stay within an hour of my home, which
Okay.
I worked with. So
I love though that it sounds like you two really worked closely to make sure that you understood what the criteria was that you were looking to buy, right? You said within an hour of where you currently live, the price point that you wanted, which meant a certain type of neighborhood that would dictate that it needed to be the multifamily that you wanted. So I love that you guys really had, it sounds like, that like consultation conversation where we sat down and we're just like, okay, we're not throwing darts here at a wall. We're really going to say and curate what that experience is of what made the best sense for you. So I'm really happy that you found a realtor that took the time with you to go through that. Now, how did you find that realtor?
So my single family rental is kind of fun in Florida here. There's a vacant house that had been vacant since I bought it with my ex back in 2015. And I've been keeping an eye on, I'm like, oh, it'd be great. One day I'll own a rental right next to me and dreaming. I'm just, dreaming. Easter Sunday of 2019, she happened to be at the house. It turns out that the bank had just finalized the foreclosures, all that. And I'm very social. Sales is my full-time job. I went up and just started chatting with her. I'm like, oh, asking about the property, finding out she's a realtor who will be managing this eventually for the bank. I was not in a position to buy in 2019. However, my boyfriend was. So he had also liked my idea of turning this into a rental. This ended up being his first property that he purchased, which, I mean, he had to get a renovation loan. I mean, it was a hot mess. It'd been vacant for easily 7 or 8 years before he ended up purchasing it. But that's how we met her. Then we called her up, found out she's from Jersey too. So we clicked. We got a lot going on that's in common. And eventually, when it came time to buy the house we currently live in, called her up right away. And then I told her at that time, this is a possibility, it's long in the future. It's not this year. And then, she didn't expect, and then all of a sudden I call up like, so Stephanie, this thing I told you that several years in the future, help.
We're now there. We now got to this place. I remember when we talked about that it was like, okay, this might be a possibility at some point, but really wasn't something that I was expecting for you to have take place this year. I'm neither did you, but I'm happy that you were able then in that situation that you already had the team in place. You knew the people that you needed to call. You knew who you wanted to be able to work with. And also I love that she has earned your trust for repeat business.
Third one, and she's now saying, okay, so how are we going to get you your next multi or investment property? She's already planning how she's going to help me get the one that's going to be multiple parcels.
That's fantastic. I love hearing that, and it makes such a difference when you find like a realtor that is on board with you, that understands investing, and that really kind of spent that time to build that relationship with you. That's why I think it's so great that she sat down with you and talked through what are we looking to buy, rather than either telling you or leaving you with kind of too many different options, which would have made it harder to make a decision, especially when you were on a deadline.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. She made it a lot easier.
So I remember we ended up kind of connecting over this past summer, and there was clearly some certain things that precipitated that event of you saying, hey, I kind of need to reach out and get some help and get some advice on this. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about kind of where your mindset was at that time when then you were like, okay, I need to sort out where I'm going next?
Yeah. And so to start off, I am somebody who likes to have a plan. I like to be organized and I like to know where I'm going or how I'm going to do something. I had just heard that there was a very slight chance that my tenant might be be able to get a loan. You know, there's a possibility, but also at the same time, I had finally hit a point with getting out of my divorce with away from my ex, where like, wait a minute, I can actually save money. I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. I'm not just getting tenants so I don't get foreclosed on, you know, that sort of thing. So I was at a place financially where, you know, this plan to get multiple properties for part of my retirement is a reality. However, even with the 1031, I had no, I had all these different pieces, but no way to strategically put them together to sort them out in my mind and to organize them. I noticed a
Mhm.
comment somebody else mentioned about your roadmap on the Facebook page, and I said, "Oh, let me look at this." So I go through your emails, I start reading through. I'm like, you know, there's a lot of people who will sit down with a one-time only financial planner to look at all their finances and help them put together what they want their retirement to look at or what they want, their long-term financial future to look at. And I saw the review of the roadmap and I said, this, be it one time or multiple, this is the exact same thing as a fee-only financial planner, except for real estate. and
Very true.
and then I looked, I said, if I can get a roadmap that'll give me, and I didn't think roadmap at the time, but now that's my term in my head. But if I
Yeah.
can get a plan that will at least help me straighten out my thoughts and help me figure out the next few steps to where I want to go, that'll give me the push I need if this sale in Pennsylvania becomes a reality. But if it doesn't, what I need to do to strategically save the money to have a down payment, because I wasn't I have a home equity line on the other rental that I have, and I dedicate that for repairs that I don't have money saved, that sort of thing. So I needed something
Mhm.
to organize me, and that's kind of, it looked like it would organize me.
Yeah. And after going through it, do you feel that it did help organize you?
I mean, it really gave me several different options. And it helped that once I found out that 1031 was possible, I'm like, oh, well, now I know my next steps. I know exactly what I need to do beyond just having the network. And not only to get my rental, to get my 1031, but to
Mhm.
get the repairs done, get the tenants in, and then at the same time start saving for the next property, so that the next property isn't 5 years from now. The next property is going to be much sooner. I haven't quite gotten to when it is yet, because I got to get another couple more things on the duplex to do, but it just crystallized, and now I'm kind of looking at all the other options. Should I do a hard money loan? Should I do the BRR method? Are all these things that were just, they're too overwhelming for me. They're now, well, these are
Mhm.
things that I can look into because I have a better grasp
Yeah.
on everything. So,
That's great. I'm really happy to hear that that gave you that foundational plan for you to say, okay, I kind of know the direction. Because I remember when we first started talking, there were quite a few options of different ways you can go. And you're like, this might be a possibility, this might be a possibility. So it was actually great that we kind of were able to identify a couple different routes that
mhm,
could work for you, depending on a couple things happening. Once again, for example, with the tenant buying that property, if they could get a loan, couldn't get a loan. So it was nice that we were able to come up with some of those options to walk you through what next steps would be when you kind of got there. So I'm happy that that helped you sort out what would be next for you.
yeah.
So with that, what do you feel is going to be your next step in moving forward? So now you're saying, well, I moved up already, that the next step, I moved up already a couple of years forward. So what would you say now is coming next for you?
So next, first, I've got my first tenant has moved in. My first tenant's moved into the duplex. She moved in last Friday. And I love
Congrats.
her story. She was living in a hotel and then in a car for a week with her kids. She had the funding.
Aw.
I mean, but luckily she had the things in place that if she could just find an affordable home, she had money for the security deposit. She had funding from the Department of Family Services and things to get those first few months while and she had a job. So she had a bunch of stuff, and
Mhm.
it just made me feel so good. And
Yeah.
I also have a tenant who's going to move in the back unit once the bathroom there is finished after Thanksgiving. So I've got all that in place. Yay. And what I've realized in my market is not only is there a lack of housing, I mean, Tampa rents the statistic I read was that nationwide rents are increasing 13%. The Tampa area, it's
Mm.
25%. That's
Wow.
crazy. So I have really narrowed my goal to affordable but maintained housing. And so next steps are I've started put alerts on all the properties in that zip code, because that zip code is really what I talked to Section 8 and looking into that. That zip code is what they consider I don't remember the terminology, but basically it's a lower income zip code. It's a zip code, it's an area where they need affordable housing, and there's just not enough. And landlords are increasing rents without taking care of the properties. And they're just hey, let me go. So what I'm doing now is finishing up that property and then planning out my next steps to, is there a possibility of getting the next one by the end of 2022? That's still a little bit up in the air because I want to
Okay.
get this solidified. I like to be comfortable that my tenants are in, that they're paying on time, that they've got all that they need in place so that I'm not going to have another turnover, stress. I took a great idea that somebody saw, is that if my tenant pays by the first of the month for 11 months, I'm going to give them a discount on that 12-month rent. I told my
Right.
tenant, that small discount makes a difference in somebody's life. It's crazy. And so she's been
Oh,
communicating, like, can I pay every week a portion of it? Can I do this? Can I do that to make sure it's all by the first of the month? And she's
yeah.
everything she can to make it work. But basically it's strategic planning, is what else is going to be available in that neighborhood, and what are my
Mhm.
options to jump on it quickly, but at the same time make sure that my financial security is not uprooted. So because I like that secure feeling that I'm in a good place and I'm able to help other people become in a good place. So hopefully end of the
Correct.
2022, maybe a little bit longer, but we'll see.
Well, I feel like that kind of falls under that, like the socially conscious kind of landlord situation here, where you're not saying, hey, listen, I need to make $1 million and, sit on my pile of money here. But what you want to be able to do is provide safe, comfortable housing for those that need it.
Yep.
And also make sure that you have the security for your son and for your family. So
Oh,
I know how important that is to you. So yes, it still is a business for you,
mhm.
but there's a larger mission to it than just doing that. Than just saying, oh, what's my cash flow and how much more can I raise rent and, squeeze people for money here. So I really like kind of hearing how you're setting up your business like that. And I think the word that you were looking for, the term that you might have been looking for, was opportunity zone. Is that
There
the
you go.
area that you're looking
Yes,
in? Yep.
that's
So
the word.
opportunity zones are definitely areas that are considered more in the up and coming type of neighborhoods,
Mhm.
but there are actually certain types of loans that our listeners are able to take advantage of if you purchase in something that's considered an opportunity zone. So for our listeners out there, do feel free to speak to your lenders about that if you are looking in an area that could qualify for that. It does sometimes help with down payment assistance
Mhm.
or some other regulations that are just nice added bonuses. And then
Mhm.
once again, just like Barbara's doing here, you get to really help and make an impact on other people's families.
Mhm.
I love what you said about rent. One of the other strategies that I've heard with that you also might want to consider is, I've heard of people that will give a discount if rent is paid like a couple of days early or like a week early, that type of thing. Instead of then charging a late fee on the other side, but almost kind of giving a reward for paying on time.
Yep.
So I like the idea though, if to incentivize someone to say, hey, listen, let's work together on this. If you
Mhm.
can meet these expectations, then this is what you can expect of me as well.
Yeah.
So I think
Mhm.
that's a great idea. Is there anything else that you feel that you are planning on implementing into your current properties that fall under more of a mission-based role being a landlord?
So a couple of things that I've done. I haven't done it with my single family home just because it's a whole separate, much better area neighborhood type of thing. But with the current property and with the other ones, any ones that I get, I am including just about everything in the rent except no electric. But I'm including internet, lawn care, pest control, depending on the property, water, sewer, if it's connected kind of thing. Because I realize
Mhm.
that first of all, it's got to be a home that I'm comfortable living in. I want that lawn care. If I'm a single mom, I want that lawn care taken care of. I don't want bugs in my house.
Yeah.
And both the current tenant that moved in and the one that I've accepted for the back unit, they both work from home. If they can't afford their internet, they have no
Yeah.
job. And I realized, and this is something I thought of with the pandemic, you've got kids who can't do school. You've got people who can't work without internet. So that I feel
Mhm.
like is a key utility that I'm including there as well. So, and I'm now officially approved with the Child Services Board, so I can help out with any of those families if I have anything. I
Oh,
did
that's
look,
great.
so I looked into section, yeah, it's pretty cool. The caseworker for this one tenant was just apparently telling her that she went through this weekend and she's so excited for her client as well, which is kind of cool. But
Yeah.
the other thing I've been looking and doing, I think will help a lot, is if I make sure that I peg my rents to what Section 8 will allow for their tenants. That way they stay affordable. I always have the
Mhm.
option of a Section 8 tenant because there's so many great Section 8 tenants in the properties I saw other ones that I was looking to buy. There were some great, well-maintained, beautiful. You could tell people just wanted to take care of their homes. So
Mhm.
I think if I peg my rents to those rates and make sure anything I buy I can cover the mortgage with one tenant, I'll be able to do everything else that I want to do and still give people affordable but maintained housing. And I'm also building up my network of local vendors. My lawn care guy lives in the neighborhood. The cleaner came to me from the pest control
Oh,
guy.
wow.
So she's a local and she sparkling clean, amazing job. And the pest control, when he realized I was getting rid of the two refrigerators and the stove, one of the stoves because there were roaches in them, he's like, I got a guy who can pick these up. I got a junk man. So he got
I
it
love
all
this.
taken care of. So I'm trying to use the network of local people to keep
Mhm.
money in that particular neighborhood, keep the whatever I can with jobs and keep the resources in the neighborhood. I don't want to bring in someone if I don't have to from outside. Let people have pride in who's there and get to know the
Exactly.
so.
And support local businesses,
Mhm.
support the mom and pop shops, right?
Yeah.
Not the 1-800, lawn care kind of guy, but
No.
really be able to support the people that are local to you. And once again, that's going to just kind of feed into also that networking referral business that you already have. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to be talking next year. I'm going to have you back on the podcast because your landscaper's going to come and say, hey, by the way, I saw this property. I think it's foreclosed on or it's for sale. I think you should buy it. And that's going to end up being your next property. But it's all those different connections there. And we all kind of work together and support each other. That really some amazing things can happen. So I love that you're really creating this like ecosystem within your own community to really benefit as many people as you kind of can.
I'm
So
fine.
you absolutely are. And what I would like to kind of close with is I know that you have big dreams and big goals. And I know maybe we don't know exactly what that looks like, but I would love you to kind of help our listeners just dream a little bit about some of the bigger goals that they have rather than just saying, hey, I can make an extra $100 a month. So
Mhm.
would you like to share a little bit about what you would like to in long term have as a goal? Because I just find it absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. So I have a couple main goals. One of them is that have enough properties to have a comfortable retirement. They're all paid off, and I don't have to worry, will there be Social Security? Will my investments pay? Like any of that stuff, I'll be able to retire on just my real estate while still providing maintained but affordable housing. The other goal is, I mentioned earlier, I am a survivor of domestic violence. I have, got a very long-term restraining order. And I did get lucky. I did have a decent support system when I left, but the support group I attended, because I needed the emotional, the support there, I realized how many women and men, but most often women, don't leave because there is no affordable housing and there's not enough room. The domestic violence agency and shelter that I work with, I mean, they don't have the space they can get them to shelter, but when they get after they leave shelter after a certain period of time, there's nowhere for them to go. They've got the funds to help pay for it, but there's nothing. So I want a minimum, again, either two fourplexes, preferably, because I want to try to create a little kind of village. Um, but for first opportunity and pretty much only opportunity are going to be survivors coming out of that program, out of it's called the Haven.
Mhm.
And coming out of there, this is your place. Your cost to rent is essentially going to be my cost. I'm not trying to increase it. And the Haven will have the first opportunity to that. And they'll be able to run programs out of it. Maybe there'll be a courtyard or there'll be a little building where they can have birthday parties or they can have support group or whatever else they need, not just a house. So that's those two things. And I'm trying to impart this into on my son as well, that You don't have to be, because I volunteer at Girl Scouts, I have a little boy. You don't have to be a part of a community to help them. If you are, that gives you more incentive, but he's hopefully a little boy who's never going to experience the same things I did. But that doesn't mean that he shouldn't want to help those who he doesn't have anything in common with. So trying to give that and grow, really try to help people that way.
I love that. And really, it sounds like with your son to kind of build that empathy and that, yes, it might not necessarily be a situation that he experienced firsthand, but can still understand that there are things that he didn't go through that other people do. So I think that's a great mission for our next generation. I love what you're doing and cannot wait to hear when you're able to get to those goals there, especially setting up the domestic violence center. So I love that. To end our episode then today, I would just love to hear if you have any piece of advice for any landlord out there listening to this that would just be something that you wish somebody had told you that now you would like to impart on others.
The biggest thing that I can think of is that always make sure that you meet the person who wants to rent their unit, even if it's through FaceTime or Zoom. Do not rent units sight unseen, because you really, really get a feel for people. And there's so many different types of people out there. And that's something that I would love to know in the beginning, because I didn't, to be honest, my first tenants in Pennsylvania, the second tenants I bought it, I didn't meet them. They turned out okay in the beginning and then just became a disaster. I did meet the second one and just amazing. Trust your gut when you meet people. That's the biggest thing, but meet them some way, shape, or form.
Correct. And actually, I always think that that's something very unique to women in real estate investing, is we just have such an amazing gut feeling about things. And I think sometimes the way that our society has kind of made it, it makes it very difficult for us to be able to listen to that gut feeling sometimes. And we get a little muddled and we kind of lose that confidence in there. But sometimes I think if we can kind of hone back in onto what that gut feeling is really like, I think we can make very good decisions that way. And I think that's what kind of gives us a leg up as real estate investors, as women. So Barbara, thank you so much for coming on today's episode. I really appreciate you taking your time out. I really do. Thank you. And all of our listeners, I'm sure, are happy to hear your story.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you. So for our other listeners, if you are interested in the roadmap program that Barbara actually went through as well, I will make sure to put that down in the show notes so you can find the information there. Otherwise, please do make sure to subscribe if you are either listening on our podcast or on our YouTube channel. So that way you will not miss our next weekly episode that always comes out on Tuesdays. Thank you very much. And I'll see you at our next episode of the Lady Landlords podcast.